The title of this talk is Control-Alt-Hack, White Hat Hacking for Fun and Profit. My name is Yoshi Kohno, and I'll be presenting with Tammy Dinning and Adam Shostack. I want to begin by giving a little bit of information about who we are and where we're coming from. Tammy and I are both members of the University of Washington Department of Computer Science and Engineering Security and Privacy Research Labs. And for the purposes of this work, Adam is an honorary member of that lab. Now, our lab consists of a whole bunch of people, not just us, and we're doing what we think are a bunch of interesting and exciting things. For example, there's Franzi. She's doing research on web tracking and user-driven access control. We have Carl and Tope. They're doing embedded system security research. Actually, Carl, Alexi, and Franzi have both studied the security of automobiles. We have Miro, who's doing work at the intersection of security and machine learning. Roxana's working on security for cloud computing, also security for mobile devices. Dan is working on a whole bunch of other things. In addition to being our expert locksmith, he also does work on medical device security. And there's a whole bunch of other people in and around the lab that make the lab successful. So one of the things that you might ask is, what does an average day in our lab look like? Well, as I mentioned, Alexi, Carl, and Franzi both worked on security for automobiles. What you may not realize is that the modern automobile is actually pervasively computerized. There might be 10, 30, maybe even over 100 computers in your automobile, depending on what the automobile is. And these computers are connected to each other over one or more wired internal networks. So the question we had was, what might an attacker be able to do if they could get access to the car's internal network? Could they, for example, affect the engine, or the brakes, or the lighting, and so on? We actually purchased 2 automobiles in collaboration with UC San Diego, subjected them to battery experiments, found that the attacker could do this if they're on the car's internal network. And in fact, we figured out ways that someone could do this without ever actually touching the car, via vulnerabilities in the car built-ins, telematics units, cell phone interface, and Bluetooth interface, and so on. We also studied the security of consumer-level devices. For example, here are pictures of 3 toy robots, 2 of which have embedded webcams and also Wi-Fi capabilities. We wanted to know what might happen if an attacker could connect to one of these robots over the internet. Could they turn it on? Could they drive it around? Could they see the video stream? And so on. And we also do a whole bunch of things for fun. Might dress up as characters for Halloween, might make some sort of gadgets to celebrate Halloween, and so on. There are a whole bunch of tools that we need to do to make this successful. We have oscilloscopes in our lab. We have a whole bunch of software libraries, either that we write ourselves or that we purchase, or some open source libraries. We use software to help us visualize the data that we analyze. And of course, because we work on long hours, we have an espresso machine in our building. So wait, what is this all about? If you walked in late, you're probably saying, what am I talking about? I'm talking about a lab, but I'm showing you a whole bunch of cards up there. Well, if you didn't read the title of the talk, but are just showing up, this talk is actually about a card game that we created called Control-Alt-Hack, White Hat Hacking for Fun and Profit.
So I'm going to talk, I don't have a lavalier mic on, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the motivation that went into this. And to give you some context, security issues sort of litter the news, and this isn't a surprise to anyone. This is just some stuff we pulled from Slashdot in the 48 hours before we actually delivered the slides to Black Hat. And if you look at these enough times, you'll sort of discover that they're the same old story over and over again, that people designing a product didn't think about security, people deploying the product didn't think about security, or people using the product didn't think about security. But sometimes it's even worse than that. Sometimes companies have security teams that advocate for security, but product teams aren't willing to justify the expense. Or you even have people in a product team that want security, but management won't include it in the budget. And so parts of the problem that we're thinking about are awareness of these security problems and the prioritization of those problems. And so some of the questions that we ask are, how can we get product teams to think about security during development and reach out to security teams? How can we get managers to invest in security? How can we train next generation computer scientists about security? And as a side question, how can we help the general public and even our friends and family understand some of what we do? And so the approach that we'd like to take to these questions is to get them while they're young. Focus in on people who are still in school, who are still learning, or who have just joined the workforce. And this this STEM demographic is an incredibly important one. The president just announced $1 billion for the fiscal year 13 budget to bring more students into science, technology, engineering, and math disciplines, because at the national level, this is a problem. Not enough people come into these fields, not enough people stay into these fields. And so we think this is a problem, and so the way that we orient ourselves to the problem is to think about carrots, think about attracting people. And I'd like to ask, how many of you have carrots in your toolbox? How many of you use any form of getting people to do things other than beating them with a stick? That's not a lot. And I think we can and should do better. I think the security toolbox is way too full of sticks. We're way too reliant on the beatings will continue until morale improves. And so I want to add carrots to security in general. I talked about this a little bit on the Smashing the Future panel this morning. But I think that things like games, like humor, which entice people towards doing what we want them to do, are incredibly powerful tools that we have barely explored. Control-Alt-Tap, that we're going to be showing you today, is our most recent effort in this direction. But I want you to realize that there is a wide open field here, that there is an awful lot of work to be done, and that there is work that you all can go do in a field that's a little bit less crowded if you want to go out and make a name for yourself. So we decided we wanted to create a game, and we decided to create a physical game. So why a physical game? Well, we have some experience with actual physical games. I created the Elevation of Privilege threat modeling tool. Tammy and Yoshi have been doing some work on a Discovering Security Threats card deck. Core Security did a game called Exploit. And the interesting thing about all of these as a group is that you get people together in the same location where they can discuss things face to face, they can collaborate, and you can do this over coffee, over lunch, over adult beverages, and people enjoy it because it gives them permission to explore these things that they may not understand very well. It gives them permission to admit ignorance. It can be really hard. I had a personal experience of giving a security class once. Somebody came up during the break and said they didn't know what cross-site scripting was. Okay, no problem. I can down level a little bit and talk about that, but it was an embarrassing thing to have to say. Games give you permission. You can pick up the card and say, hey, what's this card all about? Without having to feel that same way. And humor can help create a relaxed and open atmosphere. So we decided on a physical game. And then as we look at games and we say, what sort of game do we want to build? There's spectrums of time to learn. For example, Go, you can learn Go in 5 to 10 minutes. You can master Go over the course of a lifetime. Games like Craps and War and Blackjack take 5 minutes to learn, 5 minutes to play. Although that's not my advice if you go downstairs. You should take a little longer to learn them. But there's these spectrums all the way up at the long end to things like Settlers of Catan and Dungeons and Dragons. And so we were thinking about all of this as we went to develop mechanics for the game. And okay, so I'm on my second game release now, but I'm not a game designer really. I'm a security guy. And so what we did was we looked for inspiration in game stores, which is an awesome thing to spend your workday doing, by the way. And we came across Ninja Burger, which is a game from Steve Jackson Games, and we thought that it might be possible to actually use the mechanics in Ninja Burger. And it turns out there's a little serendipity because Steve Jackson actually has familiarity with computer security issues because his offices were raided in 1990 by the Secret Service because of the activities of one of his employees. And if you get a complete copy of this game, it actually will have a sign-up sheet for what in 1990 was a newly formed organization, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, because that raid actually was one of the events that led to the formation of the EFF. And so we reached out to Steve Jackson and licensed the Ninja Burger mechanics, and we redid the content for our purposes. And we just want to say thank you to Steve, because he not only licensed the mechanics to us, but he's been incredibly valuable as an advisor to this project. And so with that, I'm going to turn the remote over to Tammy, who's going to tell you about the game.
Thank you. All right, so I get the fun part. And my fantastic collaborators here are going to have, can you pass me foam dice? They have these foam dice, which they're going to toss at you. I'm not really sure if they're tossing them at people who look like they're paying attention or people who look like they're not paying attention. I don't know. But they have stickers on them that will let you redeem to get a free copy of the game. So, oh, you want one? Okay, you're not asking a question. All right. So it's only good for the first person to redeem it. So if you do want the game, like, don't flash all your neighbors with it.
Or with anything else.
Or with anything else. We don't advocate that. Yes. Okay. All right, so Control-Alt-Hack, what is it all about? Well, this is the front of the game box. It is, in fact, a game where you play a white hat hacker working professionally at a company. The point is to complete missions throughout your work, and then you gain Hacker Cred by successfully completing them. You lose Hacker Cred if you fail. The point is to get enough Hacker Cred that you can become the CEO. So,
That's how it works, isn't it?
Exactly how it works, yeah. So here's the back of the box, and for this talk, we're going to be using a wonderful text-to-speech engine.
So, Control-Alt-Hack. You and your fellow players work for Hackers Inc., a small elite computer security company of ethical, aka white hat hackers, who perform security audits and provide consultation services. Their motto? You pay us to hack you. Your job is centered around missions, tricks that require you to apply your hacker skills and a bit of luck in order to succeed. Use your social engineering and network ninja skills to break the Pacific Northwest's power grid, or apply a bit of hardware hacking and software wizardry to convert your robotic vacuum cleaner into an interactive pet toy. No two jobs are the same, so pick up the dice and get hacking. The game is for 3 to 6 players, ages 14 and up, and takes approximately an hour.
All right, so front and back of the box. Now we're going to show you the insides. So big card spread there. Of course, don't try to read it unless you want to go blind. But quick overview on the top there. Those are the hacker cards. Those are the characters you play in the game. The blue cards there are the mission cards. So that's the meat of the game. The orange cards are the entropy cards. We'll tell you about those in a minute. And so those are all the content cards. The attendance cards in the lower left there, they support game mechanics. They don't have any content or flavor, but we'll talk about those too. Instruction booklet, those are useful. Money, you like to make money. A bit of randomness in the game, and of course the all-important Hacker Cred. So, going into a bit more detail, this is what a hacker card looks like. On one side you have a big portrait of your character. On the other side you have the hacker skills at the top. You have numbers that indicate your skill level. Higher is better. Underneath you have any special abilities the character might have, and then down below you have flavor text, and Franzi's a globetrotter.
When not working as the company's resident software wizard, Franzi spends her time traveling to new places and meeting new people. Her current record is 13 countries in 1 year.
All right, so what are the hacker skills? On the left side there are the skills that every hacker has. They're the most essential. Hardware hacking, software wizardry, network ninja, social engineering, and cryptanalysis. Now, you may argue that some of these skills are more or less necessary for a white hat hacker, but some of them we included just because they're kind of sexy, like cryptanalysis. And on the right-hand side are the kind of optional skills that some of the hackers have, but some of them don't. Barista, connections, so who you know and what they owe you. Web procurement, forensics, lockpicking, search foo, and then the catch-all skill, kitchen sink. So I mentioned that the meat of the game are these missions that you perform. Each player tries to perform them in a round. So here's one example mission.
Lights, camera, hack. You've been hired to consult on a new cyber thriller movie. Cryptanalysis. Look through the script for blatant inaccuracies. And social engineering. Can you convince the producers that hacking doesn't actually look like a speed typing race? Success. You don't know that many hackers that code in leather bodysuits or designer sunglasses, but no one in your office is complaining. Or failure. You've already told everyone about consulting on the movie, so its inaccuracies are triply embarrassing.
So taking a look at how a mission might proceed, if you're playing as Franzi, remember those hacker skills and the numbers involved. So for skills, higher is better. For die rolls, low is always better. So for the first task, for cryptanalysis, Franzi's skill is 9, so she would want to get equal to or below her skill, so 9 or below. To complete a mission successfully, you have to do both tasks in order and finish them both. So after completing cryptanalysis, she would try social engineering. Here there's a modifier, so +3 means it's an easier task. Some of the cards have negatives, so they're harder tasks. So her skill is an 8, so she would need to get an 11 or below in order to succeed. And that's basically how the missions work. So I mentioned entropy cards. They're basically cards you regularly draw from in order to add a bit of randomness into your gameplay. There's good things and bad things. So one of the big suits in entropy is Bag of Tricks. They're things you can buy that give you an advantage during gameplay.
Acting class, you are the chair. Be the chair, feel the chair. +2 on social engineering. Keep this card in play.
So another big part of the entropy suit are the lightning strikes cards, which are kind of fun to play because you play them on other players to sabotage them.
Awareness training. 2 weeks ago, the target held training seminars about social engineering threats. Great that everyone is on the alert, but it does make your job harder. You're at a -3 penalty to your social engineering skill on your next roll, but not subsequent rerolls.
So those are basically what all the cards are like. Now we're going to show you a little bit how to play. So we're going to start at the beginning, so you can get an idea what game setup would be like, and feel free to start lobbing.
And so we noticed that because of the projector orientation, you're all looking at the projector, so if we started throwing, we might hit you on the side of the head. So what we thought we'd do is that every time there's a die roll, we would throw some of these dice.
Okay.
Just throw a couple.
They're also
Okay,
foam, so we didn't want to hurt people. Hopefully you'll be okay, right? All right.
And again, we don't have very strong arms, at least I don't, so you would sit up front. If someone has a very strong arm and is willing to help throw, we'll give you one also. Oh, and you're going to help too.
Oh, you get out. Excellent. All right.
All right, that's good for
Okay.
you.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, we can give you a handful to run back there. Excellent.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So starting at the beginning of the game, we've got Alice and Bob and Carol, and they're all going to play. So they're sitting down, and what they need first are hackers to play as. So how that works is everyone gets randomly dealt 3 hackers, and they take a look at them, see what their skills are. Maybe they just pick them because they like their hair, whatever. So everyone reads their hackers, picks one to play. So Alice there is going to decide to play as Deborah, and Deborah likes to nap a lot. And Bob is going to play as Gabriel. He does a lot of cooking, and he bribes other people around the office, gets advantages. And Carol there is playing as Tope. He plays the acoustic guitar very well, so he actually gets gigs and makes extra money that way. So he gets extra money every round. So now that everyone has chosen their characters, we're going to give them their starting packages, which is 3 entropy cards, 1 attending card, 1 not attending card. So they got their entropy. All right, so we're going to give them their attendance cards. And everyone starts with 6 Hacker Cred. They're, pleasantly mediocre. All right. Toss some dice.
Okay. Okay.
Breaking the rules, I guess. You said it was only going to be in die
I'm
rolls.
going to hit the camera. Sorry about that.
All right, okay. So, ready to start playing. We're going to start with round 1. So phase 1. Phase 1 is the goodies. You distribute money and you distribute the entropy cards. So everyone gets an entropy card and everyone gets money, except Carol, she gets extra. Then phase 2, everyone draws their mission cards. There we go. All right, so everyone's going to take a look at their cards. They're going to read their cards. And this is where the attendance cards come into play. So hackers naturally, they have a very glamorous lifestyle. They're always traveling to exotic locations. So the company does not actually meet in person. They meet over video chat. So each round, the characters can decide if they're going to attend the staff video conference or if they're going to have connectivity issues and sleep in. So a lot of text on the cards, but the main gist we're going to focus on here is that if you attend the staff video conference, you get an extra entropy card. And you can also talk about trading your missions with other players. And if you don't attend the video conference, you get a free reroll during your mission. You slept in, so you're thinking more clearly. So all those players are going to take a look at their missions. They're going to think about whether or not they want to attend the video conference. And then everyone goes ahead and plays one of their attendance cards face down. So staff video conference. Everybody flips over their attendance cards at the same time. You can see Alice and Carol are attending. Bob is not attending. So everyone who is attending the video conference flips over their missions. They're now public. And they can decide, well, first they get their entropy card. That's good. Goodies. Then they decide whether or not they want to swap missions with other players. And you can bribe and negotiate. So now comes the heart of the round, the missions, where each player in turn attempts his or her mission. So normally the player with the highest hacker cred goes first, but of course we just started, so everyone's tied. So understandably, ties are settled with die rolls. So everybody's going to go ahead and roll.
So die rolls. So throw?
They're rolling.
Okay.
They're rolling. Yeah.
Good arm.
All right, so everybody gives a roll. Low rolls are good, so Alice is in fact the winner, and she's going to go first. So her card's already flipped over, but she's going to go ahead and read her mission card to the table, and Adam is going to read the mission card to you.
Blind trust. Sometimes you think people will install any phone app, no matter where it comes from. Time for an experiment. Software Wizardry. Write a game that secretly takes a photo every 30 minutes. As a white hat, you play nice, so don't upload them. And social engineering. What would make your game popular? Pigs? Birds? Kittens? Chainsaws. Success. They may have trusted you, but your app isn't so blind. Some of those photos could be really, interesting. Or failure. You released a Trojan app. What were you thinking?
So Alice was getting ready to play her mission, but then Carol surprised her with a lightning strikes.
Got a date. You met someone charming. Get last-minute reservation for tonight's date at that amazing Thai place. Roll against social engineering. Success, continue with your mission. Failure, -1 hacker cred immediately, and continue with your mission.
So now Alice has to go ahead and do that lightning strikes. So of course the task is roll versus social engineering. And she's playing as Deborah. Deborah has a social engineering skill of 11. So Alice wants to get an 11 or below on her roll, which she's about to do.
I'm going to close my eyes when I throw a picture.
All right. She rolled an 11, so she succeeds. Remember, equal to or less than or equal to is good. So she has successfully defeated the lightning strikes. And next up is time for the mission proper. So remember, the first task there is software wizardry. She's playing as Deborah, so she needs to get a 10 or below. Here we go again.
Okay.
All right.
They're going to get tired of rolling here.
We're sitting up.
So Alice rolls an 8. She's rolling very well today, possibly like or unlike our throwing, depending on who you ask. So next up is the social engineering task. She's playing as Deborah. Social engineering is 11. She wants to get an 11 or below. And
Okay.
Here we go.
Oh, sorry. I almost hit someone.
So she got a 10. She succeeded, which means that she has succeeded at her mission overall. And she's going to get the reward, which is a hacker cred. So that's what Alice's turn might look like. And then, of course, you have to proceed with the other characters. So we've got Bob's turn. Let's say, so Bob, remember, did not attend the staff video conference, so he flips over his mission. He has to make a connections roll. He needs to get an 8 or below. So he goes ahead and rolls. And he gets a 10. He failed. But remember, we were just saying that he did not attend the staff video conference. So he gets a free reroll during his mission. So he's going to go ahead and use that free reroll now.
Okay.
But he did even worse. He got a 12. So Bob fails very thoroughly.
You're welcome to move towards the front.
Yeah, stampede. That's a good idea.
Okay. Okay. All right. Middle then. You're welcome to
All
move
right, that's good
towards the back.
feedback. We'll,
So Bob fails his mission. He loses a hacker cred. Carol's up next. It's her turn. She wants to make a social engineering roll. She needs to get a 9 or below.
Okay, more.
We're running short on dice.
So she got a 10. She failed. But this is where a bag of tricks comes in.
Magic lessons, sleight of hands, distractions, bluff, fakes. Magic has a lot to teach about using misdirection to con people. Once per turn, you may re-roll a failed social engineering roll.
So she's going to go ahead and spend part of her discretionary budget. She's going to buy that bag of tricks card. And she's going to use a re-roll for social engineering.
Reroll.
Re-roll. But once again, she failed.
Are you getting that side of the room?
So
Sometimes.
no good on the mission, and she loses a hacker cred. So that might be what the player missions look like. Then there's a little bit of wrap-up before you finish the round. You check some conditions. In this case, Alice was the only hacker who succeeded at her mission, so she gets a bonus. She gets an extra hacker cred. I guess she looks good in comparison to everyone else. Then people discard. Everyone has 5 or fewer entropy cards, so no one needs to discard. And then this is the phase right here, phase 7, where you check and see if any of the win conditions have been met. So if Alice were ahead by enough hacker cred points, she would win, but she's not. So gameplay would continue in this manner. And that is what a round looks like. So, maybe a lot of details to keep track of. There are a few more in the instruction booklet, but you get the hang of it as you play. So that's what gameplay looks like. And now we're going to talk about
Learning objectives.
Learning
Okay.
objectives.
And no more dice. Go on. That's the end of gameplay, so I think we're going to
stop
do a few more
distracting
dice
people.
Okay, so as we mentioned at the beginning of this talk, we made a card game that is designed to be fun, but also to help people learn a little bit about computer security as they play.
We have to stay for questions.
So I want to go through some of our kind of explicit and implicit learning objectives. The first is we had some public relations goals, which you might call meta goals for this project. We wanted the people to play this game. Remember, Adam mentioned that we were targeting young demographics, high school students, college students, young professionals. We wanted people who play this game to learn that computer science can be fun. We wanted to help potentially draw people into this field. We also wanted them to come away with the understanding that computer security activities, computer security research, working in industry, that can be fun as well. Hopefully draw people into computer security. We also realized that stereotypes are very inhibitory. They're very unfortunate. We wanted to make it explicit that for people who play this game to understand that computer science and computer security can be fun for anyone. And this latter aspect drove many of the decisions about our content. For example, some of our missions, some of our bag of tricks, but also some of our characters. We picked our characters to cover broad demographics. For example, we have 8 female and 8 male characters. We have different ethnicities involved here. And we also have our characters doing a whole bunch of things outside of computer science. So for example, Tope is playing the guitar, Gabriel's cooking, Eva's rock climbing, and so on. We also chose our characters to be on the young side. Again, this was because our target audience was young people. We wanted the young people to more closely relate to and kind of see themselves as these characters. And we also wanted to use this game as an opportunity to help broaden the public's definition of hack. In the news, hack oftentimes is associated with negative activities, but that's not necessarily the case. We wanted to use it to encompass the things that people might do for good, finding vulnerabilities so as you go out and fixing them, but also doing things that are sometimes outside of computer security. For example, making Halloween decorations, blink secret messages might be a fun project that we would take on the side. We also had a number of explicit learning objectives. So when many of you interact with other people, you've probably come to realize that the public's definition of computer security is very different than our own. They might think that computer security means security for the laptops and their desktops, have they installed the latest antivirus software, for example. Maybe security for some things that they do on the web, they don't know exactly what, they've heard of this phishing thing and so on. We wanted to use this game as an opportunity to help people who play it realize that computer security really applies to anywhere you might have a technology. It might apply to your credit cards in your pocket, to the automobiles that you're driving, to the medical devices that you have inside you, again, all the way up to the mobile devices in the cloud. We also wanted to cover a diversity of attack techniques to help people understand kind of the spectrum of things that an attacker might use to try to compromise a system, and also the spectrum of goals that they might have. We wanted people, as they play this game, to realize that the attackers are very clever, they think outside the box, and to kind of a more appreciation for the different things an attacker might try. We have a huge list of the things we wanted to cover. You can't show it all on one slide. But here's some of the things. For example, of the attack techniques that we wanted to make sure to cover, we've arranged from denial of service attacks to insider threats to social engineering attacks. And for example, weak passwords. As a person plays this game and they interact with one of the cards on the game, that card is designed to teach them about guessable passwords and what might make a secure or insecure password. Also cover a whole range of technologies, from botnets all the way down to critical infrastructures, embedded systems, SCADA systems, automobiles, medical devices, all the types of technology that you might see, consumer devices, and so on. So as an example of how we try to incorporate these particular learning objectives, this is a card that's designed to teach people about social engineering.
I hack you a latte. You're switching it up for the company audit? Tell the front desk that you're opening a new cafe and want to set up a promotional coffee cart in their lobby.
So as you see, this card is about social engineering, about coming in with pretending to be someone else. You're setting up a coffee cart. You get inside the company's building because you're setting up this coffee cart. And now you can do things from the inside.
Connections or web procurement. Of course, you need an actual coffee cart equipment to pull this off.
So that's kind of a necessary step to pull out this con.
And then...
Yep, go ahead.
Barista, 12-ounce non-fat split shot, extra hot, 3-pump mocha with whip, no sprinkles. Can you keep all the orders straight?
So we also want to make it, insert a little bit of fun stuff into this so that people as they play might have a little laugh. Again, this is an opportunity, as Adam mentioned earlier, that we want to get people to communicate as they're playing this game. And so you might see this card, you might have a little chuckle, you might talk about it with your friend. And once they do that,
plug into the internal wired network when no one's looking and pwn them.
And so again, some of the educational opportunities, saying that maybe this company did not think about the security for insiders on their internal network. So once you're on the internal network, you might be able to carry out the rest of your attacks. We also wanted to make sure to cover non-standard targets, again, to help make sure that people, as they play this game, realize that security is not just laptops and desktops, but it's a broad collection of technologies. And so this one.
Shock value. Is the Pacific Northwest's power grid secure?
So this audience probably is already very familiar with the topic that we need to secure the power grid, that there's a bunch of issues there. With the average public, they may not. And so as they play this game, they may start to realize, oh, interesting, there's potential security issues here as well.
Social engineering. Call the IT desk. I'm a new employee, and con them into giving you the IP, internet address of one of their servers.
So here I want to talk a little bit about the creation of the cards. Remember that we were targeting a broad demographic, including high school students or college students who may not yet have much experience with actual computer science or computer security. And that kind of drove the creation of these cards in the sense that we wanted to be interesting and enjoyable for a broad demographic, but we had to be careful about the words we choose. So here you notice that we actually don't just say IP address, something that this audience would be familiar with. We have to help define it just a little bit in case they don't know. So IP parentheses internet address.
Then Network Ninja. Their computers can't be taken down for the standard software update procedures, and that means you can exploit code that everyone else patched in 1999.
So again, another learning opportunity, the idea that some of these critical infrastructure systems can't be taken down, have a hard time getting patches. Familiar to this community, we can teach that little lesson here in this card. And we also wanted to cover a broad spectrum of attack techniques. Here's just one of them.
Dumpster diving. You don't mind getting dirty. You're happy to dig through a company's garbage to look for unshredded specs, documentation, and interoffice memos. This time, the client's guards are vigilant. Rent a garbage truck, then go through your haul off-site.
So as someone plays this game, if they hadn't heard about dumpster diving yet, this card will have taught them about it. But here's an opportunity to also talk about the challenges in creating this game. We wanted to make sure to actually define what dumpster diving was, because if we didn't define it, how can they actually learn it from this card? And that's why we actually have the text. You're happy to dig through the company's garbage to look for unshredded specs, to define it for them. The big challenge here, though, is that we had this tension between making sure that the text was short and succinct so that people, it didn't disrupt gameplay too much and people had fun playing it. We also wanted to make it long so that people would learn the content. So we try to have this balance between adding too much educational material and keeping it fun. There are several other learning aspects of this game, of this particular card. Here we say this time the client's guards are vigilant, so teaching that there can be security mechanisms in place to protect against certain types of attacks. But rent a garbage truck and go through your haul off-site says that even if you have some security mechanisms in place, they can be bypassed. And hopefully as someone reads this card, they also start thinking that, wow, the attackers can be really clever. Maybe I'd heard about dumpster diving before, but I never actually thought of someone renting a garbage truck, which they can do. We also tried to incorporate a bunch of humor into the game so that as people play it, they can have a little chuckle and might talk about the cards with their friends and so on.
Love is in the air. You're demonstrating Wi-Fi security risks to an auditorium of 500 students as part of Online Safety Awareness Week. Network Ninja? Download free software that intercepts Wi-Fi network traffic, then displays the images that nearby people are browsing. Live demos are jinxed, so triple check everything. And success, the students got the point, but next time, verify that all students are 18 or over before the demo.
And again, learning opportunities in this particular card deck. If someone's not familiar with the security of wireless traffic, hopefully as they play this, they realize, oh, wireless traffic can be intercepted. People can see the images and content that I'm going through. Had a bunch of other cards there. We have I'd Tap That, security for tap-and-go payment systems, contactless payment systems. We have Going All the Way, where you fully weaponize an exploit, from finding a vulnerability, making sure that it's actually an exploit, and then fully weaponizing it.
And then speaking to Black Hat about it.
Yes, speaking of Black Hat's the final step. And that's what she said, a discussion of security for cellular communication systems. We had a bunch of references that we thought, I think we're actually, thank you, that we thought people might find interesting. For example, here's Looking at You Kid. This is security for consumer devices that might be in a child's bedroom, the nanny cams or toy robots and so on. There's actually, it's very hard to read here, but the Network Ninja skill role says, I find your lack of encryption disturbing. So another reference. We have Om-Nom credit cards for credit cards in a restaurant. Credit cards being stolen from a payments processing system within the restaurant. Baby, you can fly my plane. We have a card that's actually completely encrypted. If you want to go and take a picture of it, and first person to come back to us and tell us what the solution to this cryptogram is, we can give you a copy of the game.
I'm not reading this one.
No, yeah, 9631. Okay, and then we also have a whole bunch of white hats. For example, here Franzi's wearing a white hat. Sedon has a white hat on his laptop, and Alexi's wearing has a white helmet, though this is at night, so it's a little bit harder to see.
It's kind of gray. All right, so we're going to talk real quick about the development process, partially just so you can, to illuminate what we went through, and also for you to give it a try yourself. You can see what's involved with it. So, from a high-level overview, this is kind of what the development process looked like. First you set some goals, then you go through development, in this case mechanics and graphics. You do some testing, play testing. You need to arrange production because it's a physical product, and then you review your budget and your timeline. So, in a certain sense, this looks a lot like what a software development, process might look like. But of course, it's actually a lot more complicated than the picture that's given here, which is a bit of an oversimplification. But the nice part here is that, as mentioned earlier, we did not have to develop the mechanics from scratch. Mechanics, of course, being the numbers on the cards, the actual instructions, everything that, controls the actual gameplay. Because if it's not balanced, it's not fun, there's not a good chance of winning, that kind of thing. So the fact is, by cutting out the mechanics, we also cut out a lot of playtesting time, because we only needed to playtest for graphics and for content and for illustrations. We did not need to playtest for game mechanics, so huge leg up there. Now we're going to walk through kind of what our creation process was. Of course, Yoshi mentioned that we had a giant list of attack techniques and target technologies we wanted to put in there. Things that might be surprising, things that might be interesting, but other things we wanted to throw in there too, like who might be the clients that would be coming to these companies? What might the attackers be like? What are their resources? What are their motivations? So this was a great resource throughout the project because we could go back and refer to it when we were creating new cards. So starting at the beginning, of course, we were basing off of Ninja Burger. Ninja Burger had a set of skills. So we had to decide what skills we wanted our hackers to have for Control-Alt-Hack, and then we had to map between them. So for example, here is one of the original Ninja Burger cards.
Jim Bob's trailer. I got a hankering for that Ninja Burger goodness. Meet Jim Bob's neighbor, combat, animals. Meet Jim Bob Pitbull. Combat again, meet Jim Bob's kids. And customer service, when Jim Bob smiles, remember to smile back.
So for a card like this, you'd take a look at what skills are required, combat, customer service, and animals. You map them onto the Control-Alt-Hack skills. So that's hardware hacking, cryptanalysis, and connections. And then you just try to figure out, based on some of the content that we want to have in the game and the balance of content that's already there, what might this card look like that would make sense? So the first pass, we're saying we could do something about a startup. We haven't done any startups yet. It could be about social engineering, blah, blah. Everyone likes social engineering social network. Everybody likes social networking startups. But then we said, well, there's a lot of hardware hacking in there. Maybe we could have it be about power line security and the fact that EMI, in your home, on your home power lines can be a privacy leak, and people who plug into your home power can see what you're watching, et cetera, et cetera. So we took a look, maybe connections, maybe use that to get funding if you're doing a startup, or maybe for cryptanalysis, if you're doing the EMI angle, you could add some kind of white noise filter. And we said, well, that's not really working for us, so let's just make it about cars instead. And this may look a little familiar because that's the final card, which we snuck in earlier to the presentation because it related to research that we were doing in the lab.
And I'm going to skip over because I think we're running a little short on time.
All right,
so
we're skipping over it.
I have time for questions at the end.
So, that's one card down, but of course there's 55 other cards to go. And it can be an interesting, fun, and creative process because you are restricted by the skills that already exist, but you are restricted by the skills that already exist on the cards. So that's a little bit what the content creation looks like, go through a lot of rounds of that. And then, of course, you have playtesting. So mainly for playtesting, what we got out of it were clarifications on the card contents. So we would show the cards to experts, make sure they thought the situations were feasible. Show them to non-experts, make sure they thought it was understandable. We got a lot of refinements for how to reword the instructions to make them more clear. But one of the main things that we got out of playtesting was the attendance cards. So those are actually not in the original game. But the fact is, in the original game, everyone is supposed to, all at once, either flip over their mission card or not flip it over. But of course, that's not very covert, because you can tell whether or not they're going to flip over a card. And you get an advantage if you're the only one who attends the staff video conference. So we added in the attendance cards. We thought they were an elegant solution to the problem. And also, we thought it was kind of nice because they paralleled cryptographic bit commitment protocols. So, we also had to arrange production, of course, physical product. That was kind of interesting in and of itself, figuring out, who was going to be our printer, what kind of cardstock to use, 250 gram or 300 gram, UV coating or PP laminate. Interesting, but not exactly what you expect to be doing as part of your computer science PhD. And of course, even after going and looking back at the cards over and over again and making sure that there are no mistakes in the process, you still do end up with typos, and this was in fact not an Easter egg that was topical to the card. It was just a mistake we didn't catch. So now I'm going to pass back to Yoshi for the big picture.
Thank you, Tammy. So I do want to talk a little bit about the big picture. So what we did is we actually made a card game, as you have now seen. The card game is designed to be primarily fun and enjoyable as you play. We want people to go out there and play it and have fun doing so. And while they're doing this, sometimes without explicitly knowing it, we want them to learn something. We want to help them understand a little bit more about computer security, the breadth of where computer security issues arise, the types of attacks that attackers might exploit, and the creativity behind attackers, and the fact that attackers just might exist and attack things that you might not necessarily think about at the beginning, or you might not thinking if you're not a security person. And we also want to use the game to help promote communication. So as you're playing with friends, you might see a card that has some joke in it or has some funny technology that you didn't think might be vulnerable, and you start talking about it with your fellow game players, and then you as a group will learn more. This is something that Adam mentioned earlier. And so again, it's a fun game that is designed to be educational while you play, but it's explicitly not an educational game in the sense that education is not built into the mechanics. It's not like a game that's trying to teach you fractions or teach you multiplication or something. It's a game that's designed to be fun, but for you to learn, and for the other people to learn as you play it. Towards meeting these goals, we had a highly iterative design process where we worked on both the content for the cards and interacted with play testers, interacted with security experts and non-experts. Is it understandable to non-experts, but is it kind of interesting and fun to experts so that it meets the broad demographic? And professionally designed and professionally manufactured so that it is like a real game. And we have enough funds to produce copies to give away, and we're also going to be selling copies. I'll talk about a little bit both of these in just a moment. If you're interested in learning more, we have a website, controlalthack.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at controlalthack. There's also a mailing list that you can subscribe to for announcements. If you want to get a copy of the game, it is at the printer now. We hope to have it in hand and able to give out to people or sell in or before October. We'll actually be selling some copies of these games And that's so they can actually be self-sustaining. As a university project, we don't have funds to just produce an infinite number of games and give it away to anyone who wants. So we're going to have to figure out some way that we can actually produce some with the funds we do have, and then have enough funds so we can continue to do reprintings if enough people actually like the game. We also wanted to sell it so that it's broadly available to all demographics. The teenager who's interested in games and interested in computer science, maybe they can get this game even though they don't actually come to a conference like such as this. We haven't fully finalized our plans. We're planning to sell through some large Seattle-based online retailer. If you're interested in announcements of when this game is available for purchase, you can go to our website and either sign up for the announcement email list or follow us on Control-Alt-Hack on Twitter. And for various reasons, we talked a lot with UW about how to actually sell this game within the University of Washington. That proved to be a very complicated situation to figure out. At the end of the day, it will be being sold through a small LLC that Tammy and I founded called RGB Hats. If you're an educator within the US, I want to define educator in just a moment. We also have a limited number that we can give away, and to give away for educational uses. Since we have a limited number, we're going to look at the applications and try to figure out, and give it to all regional people who apply, assuming we still have enough left. Pretty soon there'll be an application page on our website. As for how we define an educator, well, clearly if you teach in a high school or a college, we define that as an educator for a class. Okay, I see we're out of time if you still want questions, so I'll finish this up and then one quick thing with Adam. Computer science clubs, but if you're involved in education in any other way, for example, you're in industry and you're involved in educating other people within your organization, then still please do contact us and we'll see what we can do, because we want to use this game as much as possible to help educate and help people learn. Brief note is that if you're a high school teacher and attending Black Hat, that is great, but you might wish to remove a few cards from your deck. Future game content. The current deck is based on Ninja Burger. There's a Ninja Burger expansion deck. That means we can also create a Control-Alt-Hack expansion deck. If you have ideas for cards, we'd love to hear your feedback also. And I want to thank especially Intel, the ACM Special Interest Group on Computer Science Education, and NSF, whose logo unfortunately didn't make it up here, for help supporting this work. And with that, one final note from Adam.
So I'd like to ask you to go do a few things after this talk. The first is go get the game. Hopefully many of you have free copies coming to you. And once you have it, actually play it. Share the game with others. Tell us how it goes. And we actually have some advice on ways to use it, both in an industrial setting and in a school setting on our website. And we think it might be helpful for things like security awareness training. And then finally, I'd like to encourage you all to go make your own games and to add carrots to your toolboxes, because I think that that's an important part of the future. And so with that, we will be happy to take questions. We have a few remaining free copies. If you ask a question, come on up afterwards and you will get one of those. So thank you. You're stunned into silence.
I think this is a really great tool for me to use in industry to help expand awareness within my organization and to also expand kind of communication, because I think there are topics that people are less sure of, that they don't want to look dumb asking about. So I think that's great. I'm wondering if in the expansion pack you plan to add any more advanced cards, because we do have a lot of very smart technical people. It would be great to have some more challenging cards too.
Thanks. We'll definitely keep that in mind, and actually I'm sure we'd be interested in having alternate versions of the cards.
Yeah, and one thing we'd also might do, yes, exactly as Tammy said, alternate versions of the cards, so it's not infeasible to think about creating multiple expansion decks for different audiences, and I think that's a great suggestion to keep in mind, the expert users too. Great.
Yeah, I had a quick question. I actually teach at RIT a lot of freshman and sophomore level classes, and this ties into that. Have you thought about making a version of this that's actually maybe a little more technical for those kids, because they're coming into the major? They know some, and some don't even know enough to be dangerous yet, but they're kind of playing around with the idea. And I'm looking for teaching tools, because lecturing to them just doesn't work. You need to do something a little more and have some fun with it. But I'm worried this may be a little too simplistic.
So some of the activities that we suggest use these cards as starting points. So you'd suggest that people play or pick cards that interest them and then use them as starting points for small class projects or research projects. But I'm sure we would also have some interest in making just an entirely alternate deck with different technical content, or a different game with more technical content, like EOP is more technical in nature with its threat modeling.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent comment. Yeah, I also share Tammy's response. This is, hopefully not our last game. I think we're all all three of us are very interested in the topic, so I think we are interested in other types of games that might have different mechanics. One thing that, as Tammy mentioned, we do have on our education site a bunch of different activities one might do after playing the game. I will mention that many of these card content are based on real attacks that we've actually seen presented at Black Hat, DEF CON, or in the academic computer science conferences. And so one of the things we plan to do on a periodic basis is going to provide explicit connections between those cards and the real technical material. So if someone's interested, they can read more about how do people actually really compromise a car or something else.
Cool. Thanks. Question.
So my company provides a platform, just to answer his question. It's called CyberNexus, where we teach defense and offensive techniques. And so I'll get with him later, and I might be able to share with you guys some things that we do in the STEM community and for the high schools and colleges to teach them more advanced techniques and how to do computer science type work.
Yeah, we'd definitely be interested in talking.
Have you considered using cards that actually have something other than luck as their driver? Say a question that needs to be answered by the player, driving more towards the more skilled. For instance, I've got a software engineering department that I'm always struggling with how to teach parameterizing your SQL queries in a way other than a policy document they'll never read.
I would encourage you to create a game that does that. There's a lot of trade-offs as you create a game, and the reason we wanted to talk about what we did to create it and the value of doing these things is because the three of us can only create so many games in a year. The audience as a whole can create an awful lot more games. So yes, you could do something, please do. It'll be awesome, and being on the review board here, I will help you get your content in.
The question I had was on development time. I've looked at creating something similar, not specifically towards this, but how much development time do you guys have involved, hours? I noticed the huge spreadsheet, which I imagine is a lot larger than what you guys had listed there. How much development time did you guys have involved in this?
So a couple notes there. In general, we started loosely thinking about the project last fall, so fall 2011. Overall, we had a much shorter timeline than many professional game production companies do, partly because we were able to bootstrap the mechanics. We have not been working on it full-time since then, so we haven't kept track of exact work hours. Part of it depends on sort of the audience you want to hit and the level of print production you want to use.
Yeah, I think I agree with. I wanted to say the same thing that Tammy said at the very end, in the sense that we made the decision to make ours professional quality, professional graphic designers and artists and so on. I think that we had much earlier had a game that was had much of the content we had in place that would have still been fun to play and would still have been educational if someone played it. But we decided not to stop there. But we wanted to start, making something that was even more professional. Yes, about 7-8 months, but.
Not
part-time being the fact that we're in academia and industry and doing a bunch of other things.
Other projects, yeah.
Okay.
If the goal of selling it is to keep it self-sustaining, have you considered open sourcing the content for those who want to print and cut their own cards rather than buy the prefab deck?
That's a great question. So because we licensed the original mechanics from Steve Jackson Games, we are limited in what we can do. So the license that we signed has certain limitations in place, but it's a good idea.
All right. In addition for funding, I've seen a lot of a couple card companies get funding through Kickstarter and have good success with that. I was wondering if you guys had considered that.
It's something that we talked about and something we might try to embrace in the future if necessary. Luckily, we did not need to do that for this particular game.
But it's a great suggestion. Kickstarter is a great suggestion.
It seemed from the beginning of your talk that you're originally trying to gain more awareness in the market, among young people, among the general population. What sort of marketing avenues are you looking at exploring for getting this out? Because, Black Hat talks are great, but you're hitting this audience, and you're looking really more, it sounds like, for a youth or high school or young people type audience. What kind of marketing are you planning on?
So I think there are a couple answers to that, one of which is that we're hoping that in an effect that the security community might serve as sort of the early adopters and help spread it a little bit from there. Also, we're going to be hitting, education venues and education conferences. And actually, we're probably going to see if there's like a marketing student that wants to work with us in the fall for a project.
One last question.
And one last question. Do we have
one more die?
Okay, yeah. So I guess one more dice question, one more dice. If the people continue to ask questions and we're not cut off, come up afterwards and give us your email address.
Well, we also have shirts if you want free no-op sled ride T-shirts if you want any of them.
But those are okay. Yeah, but those aren't with us now. We also have a whole bunch of stickers. But in any case, question.
How many times did you run the game, and what kind of revisions did you make to it when you were going through the development process?
So that's a difficult question to answer because it wasn't so cut and dried as that. Some cards received significant more attention. Some cards were moved around. But we did a number of rounds of playtesting. How would you like to?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest changes was the addition of the attendance cards, which really changed the gameplay in the sense of making it kind of more clear about who's involved with the mission or who goes to staff video conference. Sounds like we're cut off. But if you have questions, we're going to be here.
Or outside.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.